You know this segment, you love this segment, and we love having him here. It's Tye Richardson. This is your Hog Roundup. I'm Evan Kamiko. Tye, it's been a little bit since we've done one of these. Couple weeks, I think, since you guys have been all over the country in Providence and in San Francisco, but now we're back in Fayetteville. It's Woo Pig weekend, one of the best times of the entire spring semester, and we've got a ton of action. Baseball, softball, football, all going on this weekend. But Tye, we've got you on, and that means one thing. We're going to start with some football. The spring game for Sam Pittman and company. Final practice takes place today. They'll hit the field on Saturday. Again, this is all weather dependent from what I've heard. The weather is not looking too good. So that's maybe a little bit of a negative at anything of this show. We like to stay on the positives, so let's talk positives. What are you most excited for about this weekend?
Well, I think we got a chance to talk with Andrew Armstrong, and know Courtney did as well. I just think it's the quarterback and wide receiver dynamic. That's something that we haven't. We've seen in practices and whatnot, but what does it look like after that? So that stands out as number one. I know Sam Pittman, when asked about the transfer portal, Evan, he's talked about defense. So, what defensive players outside of Cam Ball and Xavier Sori stand out? I know Bradley Shaw has been a guy that's they've talked about, talking about with Tom Murphy about that. So it's exciting for fans to get a better glimpse of some that you haven't seen outside of just those great highlight videos that you guys put up on Big Trail Nation.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think quarterback wide receiver is a big question mark, especially, you lose Isaac Tesla, you lose Isaiah Satania to Oklahoma, you lose Andrew Armstrong, you lose all these guys to the draft. Who's going to step up? I think my favorite right now, and he might have the best name on the team, Omega Blake. I just think he has looked really good. He's been the part, and Raylan Sharp are two guys that I think could really step up and fill in those roles. Coach Pittman said a couple weeks ago, they're still looking for that, bigger frame guy, kind of like that Andrew Armstrong. But they're not worried that they'll get that. But I think when you look at the quarterback and Talon, you really want to see steps forward. I'd love to see him reading a defense better. And I think that starts a little bit in that spring game to see what he can potentially do to manipulate safeties a little more. He struggled in reading defenses at times last year, but he was able to get away with it because of how athletic he is and his ability to escape the pocket and extend plays. So curious for you, when it comes to Talon Green himself, what do you want to see? Maybe it's something with protection too. Maybe he's got to be better when it comes to handling his offensive line.
Evan, the latter part, what you just said, stands out to me. He's got some offensive linemen returning from last year's team that I know he's happy to have back protecting him. I think we're quick to jump to, like I initially did with the tandem of a wide receiver quarterback, but sometimes I know it's hard for people to believe, but sacks are on the quarterback for not calling out the right protection, not noticing blitz pickups and everything else. And yes, the offensive linemen and running backs and others are part of that. Wide receivers not telling, hey, corner blitz, stuff like that. But I would like to see, again, progression from Taylor Green. One of the things Andrew told us, he really pointed to Bobby Petrino's offenses in year two, which he's really high on. I think a lot of Arkansas fans would love to see Andrew back for another season here in Fayetteville. He's not here, but he's hoping his former quarterback has success in year number two in Fayetteville, particularly with that offensive line that at times left him out dry last season.
And no matter where Bobby Petrino has gone, it feels like that offense has really made that jump from, pretty good to closer to elite in those year twos, whether it was Arkansas the first time. You look at when he was, at Louisville, and Lamar Jackson in year two really flourished there. So this could be the year. Look, I've been kind of saying it, low key, that I think Talon, if he does take that step and that progression, could be, one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC, potential Heisman candidate. I think that's maybe a stretch, but he's got all the tools in a modern day quarterback to potentially be what they look for in a Heisman winning quarterback when it comes to extending the play, the big rocket arm, being able to take guys down and really carry an offense. So the question for me for Talon is, to our point, can he read defenses better, and can he protect himself a little bit more and adjust his offensive line? But I want to talk about defensive line right now. We're in the trenches. That's the most important part of any football team. Landon Jackson going to go to the draft, just like Andrew Armstrong, just like Isaac Tesla. Landon's probably the highest draft pick. We'll talk NFL draft in just a little bit. But when you look at this defensive line and where they're going to have to, plug and play some guys, what do you think is going to be the biggest key for this defensive line to, continue success? Obviously, you have Campbell up the middle, which is huge, getting him back for another year. But what do you make of the defensive line?
Well, it starts with Cam. He's the leader on the defensive line, one of the leaders on defense with Xavier Sori, probably the most likable player on the team. You can't be around Cam Ball and not laugh. I think if, like, just from a leadership standpoint and just but showing examples what's it. Now, not everyone has Cam's size and skill set, so it doesn't exactly just equate to, hey, watch me do it, you do it. But this is going to sound corny, but you just got to keep Cam healthy. He is the number one defensive lineman on this unit. To me, it's not close. If he's healthy throughout the season, you at least have kind of a stalwart in the middle that you know you can count on. And then it's the portal. The portal will open up on Wednesday, Ev. So Arkansas is going to have to get. I mean, Sam Pittman, when asked about it over and over again, he's talked about the defensive side of the football. Not like the offense is just done and perfect by the end of August. It's ready to go for the end of August, but there's definitely more holes on defense than there is offense. But it starts with camp ball.
Yeah, and three names that I'm really interested in. Ian Jaffrard, we've heard a lot of big praise for him so far. Quincy Rhodes and Charlie Collins, two guys that have been on the team, have some continuity, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll see them take that next step and hopefully be those impact guys and develop into, what Landon Jackson was in some of the Arkansas edge rushers over the last couple of years. But let's talk about the secondary, right? Like that's, I think, the biggest question mark on this team right now. You lose a lot of your secondary via the transfer portal, drafting, Hudson Card out of eligibility. Where, in your opinion, this weekend will tell you your confidence level in that and what they have to address still in the spring portal?
Well, I think I've been really impressed with Travis Williams in 2 years as DC, now going to year three. You've got Marcus Woodson, still no Darren Wilson. That's the lone turnover, I guess, on the not just the defensive staff, but on the staff overall. So you got to again cycle in a new change. You're gonna, if I know he's a former Alabama defensive back, Seattle Seahawk. Who's the new? You got to help me on this. Who's the new defensive back coach? Secondary coach. I don't know why I'm drawing a
Nick
blank on
Perry?
his name. But Nick Perry,
Yeah.
thank you. The hire of the offseason. So you just gotta feel that out a little bit. If you're just an Arkansas fan watching some of these new guys in the secondary, we know Jalen Braxton transferred in the offseason, really didn't have him at all last year based on his injury. Dwight McGlothern from 2 years ago. There's been a lot of turnover in the secondary. You think about these last 2 to 3 years, but at times you've been like, man, it's hard to pass on this team. Now other times, like against Ole Miss and LSU last season, it's been really easy to pass on them. So it just varies. That is something definitely to watch in this spring game on Saturday. Is what they look like against Taylor Green.
We'll wrap up on the spring game right now, and then we'll move on to some other topics. But when it comes to the spring game, again, weather dependent, who knows if this game's actually going to be played. Is there something that you could say would be maybe a red flag for Arkansas fans if they see X happening? Then maybe that could be, some issues as we move forward into the summer and again into fall camp, because this will all be here before we know it. We're already talking about the spring game, which is crazy. Felt like just yesterday, we were stepping foot in game one in Little Rock, but here we are talking about the 2025 spring game. What would be that red flag potentially in your eyes that could pop up tomorrow? Or
I'm
excuse me,
knocking
on
on
Saturday?
wood. Yeah, I'm knocking on wood, Ev. It's the injury bug.
Hmm.
Arkansas's made it through most of spring without like a devastating loss, and that's the scary thing. Coaches are paranoid because of the transfer portal and guys that potentially enter that they had either are blindsided by, or maybe another coach and not necessarily this league because you can't enter transfer in the spring portal of the SEC, but other leagues maybe pick out about guys like, man, this guy's having success. We want to take a crack at call his agent or whatever. But I think it's the injury bug. Arkansas's depth is always going to be lesser than the SEC opponents for the majority they play. You've made it again. I'm going to knock on wood for a third time. This answer, you've made it through the majority of spring ball without an excruciating injury. So hopefully it just stays the same heading into fall camp.
Yeah, no injuries. That's all. Knock on wood. I guess the only wood I got around me is my head. So might as well use it while I can. But let's talk a little bit about some bigger things in the NCAA. Anything else we missed on the spring game that you want to touch on before we go? I know we haven't really hit on running backs, the special teams. Do you want to touch on that really quickly, or do we want to move on?
Yeah, I mean, you got Washington, AJ Green, some guy like a guy that coming over as a transfer, Green back as a transfer, formerly of the Arkansas Razorbacks. So those are some guys you're just kind of interested in. And then the ones that were here last year, Braylon Russell, and I know Braylon's sitting out the rest. I think I had that correct. The rest is spring because of that injury, right, Ev?
Mm-hmm.
So we won't see him in this spring game on
Right.
Saturday. So running back position wise, that's kind of what you have to look forward to. I love DeQuinton Jackson. I know he had a fumble issue last year, and injuries kind of derailed what could have been an awesome season. But near the goal line, dude was unstoppable, and I think he's going to be a loss from our last year's team. We'll just see how they solidify with some of the guys they brought in, and hopefully healthier Braylon Russell in 2025.
Yeah, excited to see, especially on the Jaquindon note, if he gets any, NFL draft comps. Maybe he ends up getting drafted in a late round. He's one of those guys, 1,000 yards, bunch of touchdowns. I think 12 or 13 touchdowns. Like those numbers are good enough 9 times out of 10 to get you drafted in a late round. So Jaquinton, one of those names when we talk about the NFL draft, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit that you'll have to look out for. But here's one thing I want to talk about, and it's something in the wider scale of the NCAA that does end up impacting Arkansas, and that's Nico Iamaleava leaving Tennessee, committed to UCLA. And Arkansas plays a really weird part in all this, right? Because Madden was originally committed to UCLA, decommitted, flipped at the last minute to Arkansas. Then Nico has this NIL thing. So when you look at the greater scale of this all and what this means for Arkansas here, what do you think that is? Again, you can say there is the connection because his brother is an Arkansas Razorback, but what does it speak to when it comes to about the NIL era and the portal, especially for an Arkansas program that, Remy Cofield's their general manager, but he's a basketball guy. So what does that speak to in the grand scheme of things, not only here in Arkansas, but also the NCAA when it comes to Nico?
I think Arkansas fans are just curious more than anything. It's like, okay, this guy flipped to us on National Signing Day. His brother and father, whoever else connected, seemed like they weren't happy in Knoxville. He's now gone. And what does that look like? I mean, Madden could stay here all 4 years. We don't know. But I think the average fan is like, is he going to stay here because of this whole saga? You just don't know. Now, I've met plenty of brothers, including my own brother, who are completely different from one another. So it just varies on the situation. But it's just so odd to see how it's played out with the younger brother decommitting and signing somewhere else, and then the older brother could end up ultimately playing for the UCLA Bruins. It's a weird deal, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised by anything in college football nowadays, Evan.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting time. And again, that's college football for you in 2025, the unfortunate part of it. And it's really college sports in 2025. I mean, mainly football and basketball. But again, creeps into the baseballs and the softballs. But let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the NFL draft. That's coming up next Thursday in Green Bay. There's about 3 Hogs, like we've already mentioned. Landon Jackson, Andrew Armstrong, Isaac TeSlaa, who are projected to get drafted. I'm curious, what are you most excited to look forward to next week for the NFL draft?
Well, in talking with Andrew, I just really hope he gets drafted. I don't know how you don't take one of the best wide receivers in the SEC. I know he's a little older than maybe some GMs and executives like there. The NBA and the NFL are kind of the same line. I think it's like they want to draft you as a junior, so you have one more year on you. And that's just never made any sense to me. If the kid can play, he can play. We saw Andrew can play against the best defenses in college football. Is he the fastest guy? No. He runs great routes. He's got great hands, and he's just impossible to cover one-on-one. You look at Lando. Lando might have helped himself into a first-round draft pick based on those combine numbers. You referenced some of Jaquinton's numbers earlier. Near the goal line, dude is just a hoss. When he's healthy, he's a force. Is he a starting running back in the NFL? Probably not. But that's someone you bring off your bench as the second running back. That's not exactly an easy man to bring down. Isaac TeSlaa had some good combine numbers, which I know people were happy for. Eric Gregory, another guy that I know Arkansas fans, is a guy that just stayed on campus for over half a decade, which doesn't happen in today's age of college sports. So hoping for him to have some success, whether it's the NFL draft or the free agency route when it comes to this next weekend.
Yeah, Landon Jackson looking to be second round, maybe early third round pick. So definitely a day 2 guy. And then again, TeSlaa and Armstrong and maybe Jaquin and Eric Gregory all could be day 3 guys. And when you look at it, those guys have they're talking to a lot of teams, which is really nice to see. Again, a guy like Andrew Armstrong gets off the line of scrimmage really well, runs really good routes, like you already mentioned, not the fastest guy, so won't burn you over the top. But again, really reliable, like you already mentioned, great hands. I can just repeat everything you said, and we can just call that Hog Roundup this week. I think that'd be really fun. But anyway, let's move on. That will be next Thursday night. Good luck to all those Razorbacks who are going to get drafted. Tye, I know we're not that big a baseball guy and softball guys on Hog Roundup, but we got to talk about it. Woo Pig Weekend, it continues, just a celebration of all of Arkansas sports in the fall and the spring right now. What are you looking forward to? This is a really interesting Texas A&M series. We'll talk about it really quickly. Again, softball, unfortunately, they don't have an SEC series this weekend. It's Colorado State, so we'll mention them in a little bit. But with baseball specifically, it's a Texas A&M team that's really intriguing, in my opinion. What are you excited for in that matchup?
I think it's the Texas A&M and what they're going to do this weekend. I know we often focus on Arkansas, and they lost their first SEC series against the Bulldogs last weekend. But are we going to see the same A&M team the last 2 or 3 series where they're really scorching hot? Are we going to see the A&M team that struggled initially? They're going into a hostile environment at Bob Walker Stadium. We know they lost their best player, Gavin Grahovic. in I almost said off season in the non-conference part of their season. So they're a lesser team than a lot of college baseball people thought. But as Dave Van Hort alluded to after the UAPB game this week, this is still a really good ball club. And Arkansas changing their pitching rotation a little bit with Gage Wood, the rooster, inserted back. So I'm looking for an Arkansas team to not take this team lightly based on how emphatic Dave was following the UAPB game. And a Baum-Walker Stadium atmosphere, which we know that the game times have changed. You got one later on tonight at 7, and then you've got 2 tomorrow. So hopefully fans will be able to make it out. I know a lot of people still have to work on Fridays, especially around lunch or whatever. I know the game's not till 2 o'clock, but just hoping that there's a great matchup ahead in Bob Walker. And as far as softball goes, coming off their victory against South Carolina, and they beat UCLA earlier this week 7-0. You just like to see them really take care of business against Colorado State this weekend, Evan.
Yeah, and we really haven't seen a weekend, and it feels like it's been a while since we've maybe seen a full Baum-Walker Stadium and that full hostile environment because of just how wacky the weather's been the last couple of weeks. Obviously, they're
Yeah,
in Georgia, then before that's the Missouri series, and you get 3 games in, but it's all rain, bad weather. You never really know what you're going to get. Double headers on a days, and fans not really wanting to go, so it'll be really fun to see the atmosphere tonight. That's what I'm looking forward to as well. Ty, anything else on the Hog Roundup before we go? Actually, I'm actually going to cut myself off there because we got to talk about Lee Corso and him officially retiring from College Game Day. Somebody that my dad and I would be appointment television every Saturday morning to watch him put on his headgear. He's come to Arkansas. He went to Indiana last year, which made me really excited as a Hoosier fan. But for you, what are just some of those memories looking back on, one of the most legendary sports analysts in the college football game?
Evan, I don't know this for a fact, but was that the only time he went to Bloomington?
I believe so, yeah.
Was this like okay? And so you and I have shared that kind of same thing where one time in Bloomington in 2024, one time in Fayetteville in 2006. There are places that he's been numerous times. South Bend, Indiana, Columbus, Ohio, which I'm going to guess that they end the Ohio State because that's where it started initially with him and Kirk Herbstreit back in the day, getting Kirk's wife's the mascot head and everything else, which is an awesome story. But Lee obviously wasn't himself the last few years. It was hard to watch at times. This was a guy that was so vibrant, so awesome, so energetic at times in his College Game Day, and then it just unfortunately, I guess the stroke and life just catches up with you. It's part of it. I know that's been something that's been told to me many a time. So I'm sad, but at the same time, I'm happy. I know he's probably wanted to hang on and continue to do this, and he had every right to based on the amount of success he accomplished over the years. But it's going to be a sad. You almost wish you could do a full season, but it doesn't sound like you can. So you're going to be as sad as you've ever been during week 1 of college football. That's such a day of excitement and happiness that initial weekend. But at the same time, there might be a tear or two shed. I know the College Game Day crew will definitely be shedding them. Heck, you're gonna have a lot of fans that will be getting teary eyed. I'm not. I think I might be one of
Oh
those
yeah.
guys. Evan.
Me too. It's sad to see, but again, you look at his career and what he's done for the college football game, and you just thank him for being there every Saturday morning for the last 38 years or so. So that's the last thing that I wanted to bring up. I know, Lee Corso, again, that's a really big story in college media today. Anything else you want to bring up before we wrap up on Hog Roundup?
Well, I just think for this weekend, just hoping and praying it doesn't rain. You think about the spring game, the baseball game's already been moved on. There's a lot of things that you're hoping to happen this weekend, and you kind of alluded to it. We were talking to one of our mutual friends, Robert Mann, over at the Stadium Shop, and Evan, I know he and so many fans have been frustrated. And you think about these marquee series down the stretch with the Aggies, the Longhorns, and the Vols. I guess the last thing I'll add is just hope for good weather down the stretch because people are so that seems so like
Yeah.
odd to say, but when you have these type of events for local businesses and local retailers in the area, like they depend on these, especially with Arkansas baseball. It's a huge boost for them. So that would be the thing to end on. Is just hoping we get some good weather here in these next few weeks for these upcoming series that are going to be titanic down just titanic matchups between Vitell, the ball number 1 balls, and everything else. Can't wait for these final few weekends up.
Yeah, Jim Schlossnagle coming, the Vols, the Longhorns, Florida next week. It's going to be a great end of the season as well. And softball also has some great series coming up, Texas A&M and LSU before they head to the SEC tournament. Ty, I couldn't have said that any better myself, so I'm just going to wrap it there. That's been Hog Roundup this week. For Tye Richardson, I'm Evan Kamico. We'll see you back here next week on the Hog Roundup.